I can hear you.
Trump is now president of the United States.
Why are men and boys struggling? And what should we do about it?
In a world of chaos and our attention is being pulled in different directions, the Pursuing Truth podcast is seeking the solution by having authentic conversations that are aimed to impact culture. Hello and welcome back to the Pursuing Truth podcast. I'm your host, Levi Brickley, and this is the Real Talk radio show where I get to sit down and have an awesome conversation with Kipp Sorensen of the Order of Man podcast and Iron Council leader. In conversations like these, we really get to dig into the topic and you get to receive different points of view that maybe help you in your life and how to implement things. Make sure that you guys go ahead and shoot me a follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, leave an Apple Podcast rating and review, because that will just allow more listeners to hear great conversations like this one. I hope you guys pull from this, and I hope you thoroughly enjoy this conversation because it is phenomenal. We covered topics ranging from the work environment and how to approach your boss. We covered taking responsibility within relationships, the heart at war, and finding integrity in your life and owning all of your mistakes so that you have a better tomorrow, because ultimately isn't that what all of us want? We want aim, we want meaning, we want to understand our purpose. It begins inside of you, taking responsibility, setting yourself aside for the betterment of others and an organization. This will be a great conversation for you guys and will immensely relate with episode 81, Solitude, Liking Me, and Finding Purpose. You guys enjoy. I've been listening to the Order of Man podcast for about a year and a half, and it's taken me a lot of time, to be quite honest, Kipp, to open up and just offer to have you on. And I've just thoroughly enjoyed your guys' Q&As every Wednesday, so it's always a good conversation. If you want to introduce yourself and say just kind of like where you're from, what's going on, and
sounds good. Yeah, Kipp Sorensen. I feel like I live in, or I have two personas in the world. I have the Order of Man, Iron Council, Kipp Sorensen, and then I have a real job and a profession, and I'm actually a chief people officer over a consulting firm here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Have been in the IT technology space for my entire career. So we're going on 20 plus years doing that, but been working with Ryan Mickler on the Order of Man podcast, man. We've been doing those Ask Me Anything episodes for, I think we're close to 300 episodes that I've recorded with Ryan. So that's a long time. So we usually do those weekly on Wednesdays. And then I also help Ryan in the Iron Council, which is our exclusive brotherhood, which is kind of our band of brothers for the Order of Man. So,
and I think that is what will be so valuable about this conversation, is because you guys have developed a community, and I think that that's extremely important for men. What was the inspiration for you guys to do that, and how did it lead up to you guys developing the program?
Oh, that's a great question. And unfortunately, Iron Council existed before I joined Ryan. So I wish I had some say in regards to why it was formed, but not to lose the value of that question. I do know what our purpose is and our mission, and it's rooted in giving men the tools necessary to rise up, to show up powerfully in their lives, for their families, for their communities, for their friends, for even their employers. And we feel like we have a really solid formula in the Iron Council that allows men to band together with like-minded individuals, but also have the systems in place to hold one another accountable, and kind of the intentionality around focused of key areas as we level up. And you know this, Levi, I'm sure, and many guys listening know this, that there's a big difference between being self-motivated and banding with people that are like-minded. And it sounds a little cheesy, and we can even get into this conversation about the power of accountability, because I do feel like we misunderstand that quite a bit. But most breakthroughs in people's lives are a result of someone else making that possible. And so if I'm around you, Levi, and I see you killing it in the world, and I know you intimately, I can kind of go like, man, well, Levi's doing this. I know Levi. And if he can do that, I can do that. Right. And we can see histories of this in mankind constantly. Whenever the 1 mile record gets broken, it's always like once something gets broken, all of a sudden everyone starts breaking it because it creates possibility and it makes it possible for other people to rise up as well. So I don't want to take away from that, but I do feel like, there's an element of being self-directed in our accountability that is very critical, but it's also critical. We don't live on an island. Yeah. And it really helps us to band together.
And, you guys developing a community of men, just the value of having another man that can understand our struggles and developing the relationship with other men to become not just like, oh, we're part of this community, blah, 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 together, but now we're actually friends. And you see my inadequacies. And as I'm on this track where I'm experiencing all of this great success at what I'm doing, you can be like, hey, dude, maybe it could be perceived this way a little bit. And I think maybe if you took this path differently, it may help you and assist you. I think that's the greatest thing about accountability, right? Is it kind of gives us a little bit of direction on where we want to go ultimately.
Totally. Well, and we can't say that enough, the power of being around like-minded guys. You use the analogy of you become friends. Yeah. Screw that. Most of us, our friends, they don't hold you accountable. Right. Your friends, most of your friends are not willing to have the difficult conversation with you, to confront you,
Dude,
to expect highly of you. Most of our friends are superficial, to be frank.
Yeah.
They're our wife's friend's husband. There's some dude that we went to high school with that all intents and purposes, if we put it on paper, we probably shouldn't be hanging around that guy because he's kind of a dipshit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's not friendship.
Yeah.
And it's a whole other bag when you and I are like-minded and we're willing to have the difficult conversations. We're willing to stand for each other and be uncomfortable. Now that's a real friendship. And I know what you mean, but it's just like so many guys don't have those kind of friendships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I even talked to some of my closest friends and I'm like, dude, freaking be honest with me. Like, quit trying to make me feel good. Yeah. I don't want your validation. The world and everybody that sees me, that validates me a little bit. Like, I see it in my life. Like, oh, I'm becoming successful at my job. Like, I'm developing relationships with new people and talking to all these different people because of the things that I'm implementing in my life. But you're here with me every day. Where are you, dude? Where are you not telling me the truth? I want to know how I'm perceived. I want to know what I can do to move forward beyond where I'm at currently. And I see that far too often in all of my friends. And maybe it's just my age group too. I mean, a lot of our culture right now just seems like it's so focused on being empathetic. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but just seems like it's all focused on let me make you feel good through my empathy and compassion for you instead of like, dude, you can do better. And I like that you said having like-minded people. I 100% agree with that.
Totally. Well, and I think, Levi, I think we shadow it in the category of empathy, but it's not. It's selfishness.
Yeah.
I know if I should call you out. Mm-hmm. I know when I should say something to Ryan if maybe he's off track on something. I know when I should say something to a stranger in a gas station. we know, we all know when we should. And then we go, but that's uncomfortable. You know what? I don't want to be rude, so I'm not going to say something. No. You don't want to be uncomfortable, so you're not going to say something. And you shroud it under the label of empathy, but it's not empathy. Yeah. It's more in the realm of being coward and selfish.
Mm-hmm. I was talking about this with a friend, like just about the perspective of life and having like deep, meaningful conversations and the approach to a conversation and kind of like coming back to this accountability thing is like, we all have a destination we want to be at, right? We're approaching this interchange of different highways or whatever, and we can examine all of those highways and underpasses, overpasses that we see, and we can look at them. But ultimately, I'm trying to get to this destination. I'm not going to let all these other things distract me. And are you on this path with me to get to that destination? And I think that's what's important about you guys developing that community, because that's like, here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to become better men. We're trying to be more present within the home. And we're trying to develop the community around that desire to all want to be better at what we're doing.
Totally. You know, it's interesting, if you don't mind me just throwing this out, I was talking with a good friend of mine, uber successful, you know, sold his business, made millions, just, he's killing it in life. And we were chatting about the importance of fulfillment and purpose. And really in that conversation, I was just like, you know what? It always involves relationships, period.
It really does.
And I haven't really like thoroughly, like, you know what I mean? I'm not 100% there, but like during our conversation, I'm like, you know what? It's all about relationships. It's all about ultimately, what are you doing with your life to leave a lasting impact for someone else, period.
Yeah. What's my destiny? What's my legacy? Who am I? And what position do I play?
Yeah.
I think so. So how did you kind of relate with that? What brought you to terms on that?
You know what? Ultimately, I don't know. Life, being an old man, you know, I think far too often, you know, I was actually raised pretty poor. I was a poor farm kid, and I remember, first off, college wasn't a thing for me at all, actually, as a kid. In fact, I didn't worry about my grades, because after high school, the kind of work that I was going to do, grades don't matter.
Yeah.
Right. So grades actually wasn't a big deal in high school, and college wasn't even like on my radar, like, because I didn't think that was something that was even an option to me, because my perception was that's like what rich kids can do, and that's not me. So I just can't do those things. Never even dawned on me.
Right.
And I remember my senior year in high school, I was talking with some buddies, oh, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, I'm going to college here, I'm going there. And I'm like, and then someone says, well, why don't you go? And I'm like, well, I can't go. And they're like, yeah, you can. You know what I mean? And so I started having this conversation totally late, right? I should have had this conversation like 5 years earlier. But my point being is, I had a odd relationship with what it meant to be successful. And I jumped on that train, man. I wanted to be the best at what I did. When I went to school, I wanted to make lots of money. I always felt like if I had huge amount of money, then I would find fulfillment and happiness. And it's just not true. You know, it's not true at all.
And you're saying that you found fulfillment in relationships now, because now you're married.
Totally. Well, totally. Well, that's one of the things. Are you a dad at all?
No, I don't have kids, never been married.
Okay. So, and I'm going to not do the social thing that no one ever says, like, oh, you shouldn't ask people these.
Right.
Screw that.
No,
right?
Screw that. I'm an open book.
Yeah. So being a father forces your hand in ways that you will never experience any other way. It is just what it is. Yeah. And there is growth opportunity in fatherhood. And one of the greatest life lessons of fatherhood is love. And it's crazy because, you know, I've read in the Bible, right, unconditional love, you hear that term. And I've always felt like, yeah, I understand that. That's like, you know, choosing to love someone unconditionally, like logically makes sense, like check.
Yeah.
Then you have a kid and you're like, oh, now I get it. Like all of a sudden, just like it's kicked in and you're like, this person could hate me, could want to kill me, and I love them. Right. It's just crazy. And then your priorities shift. And then you think, wait a second, what's most important? What my kid thinks about me, what kind of man he grows up in, you know, and then it starts shifting things. And more, it's like even work-wise, like when I think about work, what I do for a job, whether it's Iron Council, whether it's as a chief people officer, my number one priority is what? Impact of people.
Exactly. Yep.
Period. And then the byproduct of that is success.
Yeah.
The byproduct of that's all going to work out. Like, let me give you one more example. This is really great, actually. So we do technology consulting, okay? And everyone listening, like, try to relate this to your industry, because I know I might be like unique in this space. But we talk about the client, right? Like, one of our metrics of success is a happy client.
Right.
And we'll use that term, the client. And then we'll say, like, oh, the client likes us. Or sometimes the client doesn't like us. I hate that. No, stop. There is no client. Company ABC doesn't give a shit about you.
Right.
But guess who does? William, the guy you work with.
Yeah.
The actual person in the company. And when we get rated low or a client doesn't like us, no, it's not the client that doesn't like us. It's Steve doesn't like you.
Right.
They don't dislike the company. They don't like you.
Right.
Everything is relationships. And we have a tendency to put labels. It's like, oh, the company or this or whatever. It's like, no, it's relationships.
Right.
And a successful client, a successful project is when a client knows that Levi is out to help me. He understands.
Right.
His intent is pure, and he's doing whatever it takes to be successful. You could even fail, but if I feel that you genuinely care, you have a client for life.
Right. Right. You develop that relationship. You're intentional with the relationship, and you're open. You're open to when there's, I think a key element to that is once the relationship is developed, let's say that your client or your as a customer service representative or whatever, when they come to you and they're like, hey, I'm having problems with the product here, you're almost like, okay, well, I've developed this relationship with them. I can communicate with them on this level so that I understand why they're coming to me. And I'm not hurt in my ego because I developed that relationship with them. My ego isn't hurt.
Totally. Well, and it's just intent, right? Like, there's a big difference between, you could take two bosses, and one is an amazing boss, but you feel like they don't care about you. Mm-hmm. And then you can have a crappy boss that you know they care. Well, who do you want to work for?
Yeah.
The one that cares about you.
So,
always.
So you're a leader and you're head of HR. Is that what you said, correct?
Don't say that. No, I was just joking. We relabeled it so then that way I don't have to be the HR guy. But
okay.
I'm over HR, but I'm also over like people and culture, learning and development, the kind of the whole gamut of what a typical HR would be. But just think of it as like more strategic HR, not like there's an HR problem, throw it over the fence. Imagine an HR department that's intentional about culture, employee engagement, and satisfaction, and they're integrated.
Okay. So how does let's see, I can't talk about it that way, so I'm trying to articulate it properly.
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to say it like how I'm thinking. So how would a subordinate approach you, like somebody that is below you, whatever, within that organization? Okay. What's a proper way for them to approach you so that they get the outcome that they want?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like, give me a little bit of an example.
So let's say that you work
like they're having an issue?
Maybe there's an issue with things that are happening on the job, and they So you got where I'm going with them.
So let me share a story, and this will sum it up perfectly. So I was looking to hire a new HR generalist for my team. This is probably about 3 months ago, and first let me say that I am a rarity in my industry. Okay. You can imagine I go to like a people conference, and the kind of crap that is getting spun is, how do we pander to our employees? And so I'll illustrate this in a story because I think it's perfect. So I was looking to hire an HR generalist a few months ago, and I asked this candidate, I said, hey, give me an example, almost the same question you're asking me. Give me an example from an HR perspective where you had to address an employee relations issue and how you dealt with it, and give me a successful story, right? And then of course the next question is, give me a story of where it didn't go well, right? And this first question, so he gives this example, and he goes, well, we had this employee that was in a department, and everybody in that department had a nickname for this employee, and it was offending the employee. They were really upset about it. So what do? They come to the HR department, they talk to this particular candidate that I'm talking with, and he talks to him, understands the issue, schedules a meeting, talks with the team, tells the team that so-and-so's offended and you guys need to be mindful and have some empathy and be thoughtful, blah, blah, blah. Don't want to offend anybody. And that was his success story. And I asked the candidate, I'm like, that's success? I go, so who learned in this circumstance? Well, the team learned to be more sensitive. No, you undermined the relationship and you eroded trust with the employee that was being teased. Who else didn't learn in this example? The employee offended.
Right.
Did you coach them up? Right. Did you actually tell them that, guess what? The fact that you're offended is a choice and you can own that, and you should probably get some balls and actually have a communication with the rest of the team and let them know and take a stand for yourself.
Yeah.
Like that employee never grew.
Exactly.
And that is the typical HR approach to things. Let's pander to employees. Let's play soft. One, so we don't get sued, right? So we follow state regulations and federal regulations, whatnot. And then we build this horrible culture where employees don't address issues because, they're misaligned. So in our world, we had this new manager, pings me and goes, and I won't drop names because I know some of our employees listen to podcasts sometimes, so I got to be careful. So we had a new manager, and no joke, he sends me an email, copies the CEO, and copies this person's manager, and massive email about how this employee's dropping the ball, he's never getting back to clients, blah, 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 like just colluding, just this massive justifications of why he's so pissed off and upset, and something's got to be done, and I'm going to go up the chain of command, and I'm going to drop this knowledge. And I asked our CEO, I'm like, hey, Brian, you okay if I handle this one? He's like, yes, go ahead. And I go to this new manager, and I schedule a meeting, and I go, what's going on? Well, you saw my email. I'm like, no, I'd read like a paragraph and then I stopped. Mm-hmm. So you have a problem with someone, yes? And he's like, yes. Did you talk to him? No. Okay, let me help you. I promise you, you and him are aligned. Do you think he's intentionally trying to do a bad job? Yes or no? Do you think he's intently disrupting business and causing problems? And he's like, no, I don't think he is. Okay, awesome. My suggestion, go talk to him and ask him how you can help him.
It's like, if you know that somebody is well-intentioned, then go have the conversation. It's that simple.
Totally.
But,
Totally.
too, I tell friends, when they have issues with, their bosses at work or whatever, it's like, dude, take some notes on things that you want to cover and be real clear and concise with them. Hey, this is the problem that I'm seeing. This is why I'm having this problem. And this is what I hope to get out of this conversation.
Totally.
Instead of it being like, oh, I'm pissed off, I'm just going to go in there with the emotional drive. No, I'm going to go in there very articulate. I have a reason to have this, and this is the outcome that I want from this conversation. And also, you can own and you could be like, well, I know that I did everything that I could, and I wasn't emotional in having that conversation, and I don't control the outcome, but I know I did everything that I could do.
Totally. Well, and we are meaning-making machines. Mm-hmm. We are making meaning all the time. And there's a big difference, Levi, between what happens and the meaning that someone placed on it.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I'm going to talk to my manager because he blah, blah, blah. Well, hold on. So he's holding you down and not letting you succeed? Is that true? Well, no, it feels that way. Oh, then own how you feel.
Exactly.
There's power. And I'm not saying you don't say that stuff. Like, don't be transparent, but there's power in me coming to you, Levi, and saying, hey, Levi, hey, I know this is probably not your intention.
Yeah.
But man, it feels like this.
Right.
It feels like you're not giving me opportunities to grow and learn in the organization. It's making me checked out. I'm not loving my job as much. I want to kill it. And I just feel like our relationship or the way you're showing up is cutting me at the knees, and it feels like it's undermining me. Now, I'm not saying that's what you're intending, but that's just how it feels.
Right.
And so I'm going to put it on the table for you to consider.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Like, that's not offensive.
Well,
I'm not going to get pissed off if someone came to me that way.
And in that, they're playing the victim, right? Like, oh, I can't be successful because he's holding me back, blah, 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 blah. No, dude, like, take some responsibility in your life. You are the only one that is in control of the outcome of situations. You know, I was thinking of a couple things. So when I was in my early 20s, I used to be, like, consistently late to work. Not because I was, like, you know, dicking around or whatever, you know, I was out partying the night before. It's because I legitimately, it's because I legitimately couldn't wake up. And it was like continual. Like, I mean, Kipp, I got to the point where I was wearing a thing called a Pavlok, and it's like a shock watch and would shock me awake, and I'd still sleep through the damn thing. And I'd wake up with my left hand numb. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me? You know, obviously I must have some type of sleeping issue, you know? So, I was in law enforcement at the time, and like, you know, I got guys that rely on me, you know, they got families to go home to, they got responsibilities that they got to fulfill. But even to top that off and make things much worse is if a bad call comes out, then they're the ones working it and could potentially be there another 2 or 3 hours after their shift was over, and they don't make it back home to their kid's baseball game. So, you know, my perspective on that is like, shit, how do I own myself here? How do I own my responsibility? Yeah, I got this like medical issue. I got this and that. Like, no, like I just openly communicate and just, hey, here's what I'm going to do. I scheduled a doctor's appointment to get this checked out. And I'm so sorry that I was late. I need to own that. That was my fault. Take complete ownership of it. And I got nobody to blame for my problems. And I'm sorry, you shouldn't have to put up with that with me. And I own whatever the outcome is of that, whatever the discipline is. And I'll tell you this, from that situation, my chief of police, he's like, that's what allowed you to keep your job for so long. It's because you always took responsibility. I could have came up with some lame excuse like, oh, I had a flat tire. You know, oh, I hit a deer even though I really didn't on my way into work. I could have made up all of these lies, but because I was like, this is what I'm doing, these are my intentions, and I apologize, and I sincerely mean that because I know the outcome of what it is for those guys. What I got in return out of that was value and respect. Just complete ownership for it, whatever it is. Well, end of the story. I ended up finding out that I had a vitamin D deficiency. And so I started taking vitamin D, boom, I slept so much better and I'd wake up on time, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what's great about that, Levi, is even if you did come up with those stories, no one's buying those stories.
Right.
No one in the room buys those stories. And it's funny how often we internalize and we justify and we come up with our story, and then we actually think other people are going to believe it.
Right.
No, they don't believe it. When you don't know your stuff, when you're like smoke and mirrors and you're pretending, or you're overly anxious and you're trying to impress people all know it.
Right.
Like my wife and I, we like, my number one problem with like meeting new people is authenticity.
Oh,
if
yeah.
I don't feel like I'm getting the real version, I'm out. It is the number one thing that just turns me off, because you don't know what you're getting. And I'm like, life's too short to be dealing with like Levi version 3 that's not even really him.
Right. Well, and then the problem with it is then you question, well, what are their intentions with me? You know, do they just want to take advantage of me?
Totally.
Why would I want to be around a person
good.
where I'm like constantly treading lightly around them because I'm scared to be around them. And it comes back to what you were saying, even in the workforce, is being that way as a boss. I would say. Now, I've never been in any position of leadership in the realm of business or anything like that, but I know as a law enforcement officer, as now I work in private security, the number one role is to somewhat develop a relationship with whoever I'm dealing with, whether that's the criminal that's in front of me. If I can take, that extra little bit of time, there is no rush on this, just that little bit of extra time just to be like, maybe I see him a couple days before, I'm like, hey dude, how's your day going? And then guess what? 3 days later, I have an altercation with him at his house as he's having a argument with his wife. And guess what? Because he recognizes that I took the time to sit, just stop and have a conversation with him. Wow, that prevented so much, because now he's going to respect me when I walk in that house.
Totally.
And
it's so powerful, man.
It is, truly is.
You said something earlier, if you don't mind me kind of going back to it, because I think it's really important. And we were chatting about blaming, right? Where people blame their employee or their boss or whatever, right? And they're looking to be a victim. I would actually suggest, and I've shared this probably on social media a little bit, but it's true. It's true. Yeah. And so I would challenge all of us to say, if I am blaming someone, if I'm upset, like you can even say, and if you don't mind me using this cheesy word, but I don't know a better word for it. I stole it from a book called The Anatomy of Peace. But if you have a heart at war towards someone, kind of a heart at war, right?
Yeah.
And it has a feeling to it, like, heart at war. If you have a heart at war towards someone, it's because you're out of integrity.
Right.
And you have to justify being out of integrity, and thus that's why you have a heart at war towards someone.
So could you define that? Like, what do you mean a heart of integrity?
So let me give you an example. So, and it's a super lame example, but it serves its purpose. I have, geez, how many kids do I have? I have 6 kids, right? So I've done this rep, okay? Mm-hmm. So this last kid, his name's Koa, my beautiful little boy. Let's say he's 3 months old. We're sleeping, and of course, no one's getting sleep, right? With the 3-month-old. He starts crying. I wake up first because I'm a lighter sleeper than my wife. I have a choice. Right then, I have a choice.
Yep.
Am I going to get up and go grab the little guy? Am I going to go, if we're using formula, am I going to make him a bottle? Am I going to tuck him in, or I'm going to go grab him and bring him to my wife because she's breastfeeding? Whatever, but I have a choice to do something. Mm-hmm. If I have self-betrayal, and I choose not to go do the very thing that entered my heart to tell me to go get up, I have to justify it.
Right.
And so then I'll start justifying it. I'll go, oh, you know what? Well, I got to go to work at 6 a.m. in the morning. She can sleep during the day, right? And so I start creating this story to justify me not getting up. And what will happen is I start going, well, she's the one that can sleep during the day. She's this, she's that. And then I start having a heart at war towards her so I can feel good with myself for being out of integrity.
Absolutely.
We do this shit all the time.
Dude, and that's a fundamental of life. It really is. I mean, it's not just with the wife. It's not just in the workforce. It's like, even when you're by yourself, like you know that the trash needs taken out, and you can continually set your beer cans or whatever up above the trash can and just let it overflow or whatever. But eventually you're going to have to deal with it. Like, eventually you have to take out the trash. So either you can like do it right now, get it in order, and just get it out of the way. Then you don't have to think about it. But every time you walk past that trash can, as it stacks up, it's like, man, I gotta do it.
But here's the most important part, I think, and this doesn't happen all the time, but we'll often create a negative relationship with people in our lives to feel okay about that trash can.
Yeah.
You'll start being like, well, she should take this shit out. I'm the one working all the time.
Right.
I'm this, I'm that. She can. And then you start having an emotional relationship and seeing someone differently, all because you're too lazy to take the trash out. We really do this. Think, here's the extreme version, if you don't mind me just being a little extreme for those that are listening. So any guys that have like justified pornography, you tell me that you're not justifying it and it's your wife's fault.
Yeah, right.
Without a doubt.
Like, she's not giving me enough.
Exactly. She's not putting out because of and then you've created this negative relationship with her and she's not even involved. She doesn't even know.
Yeah.
And you're making her wrong about all kinds of stuff so you can justify what you're doing.
Absolutely. You know, and all of that, I think that this is what's good about you and I having this conversation is because you're married, you got 6 kids, so you know what it's like to go through marriage. And I personally have been single for now 2 years. And I've dealt with some real difficult hardships in the midst of that, some real difficult heartbreak. I mean, at times, and I just shared my story on my latest episode of like even depression and anxiety and like feeling inadequate in myself and all of these different things. And my story isn't a story of being depressed. My story isn't a story of having suicidal thoughts. My story is a story of victory. And how did I get to this victory? That's the story. And it unfolds like a book as you're reading it. Like, you know, and so often I look back on things and I reflect because I don't want to be in the same position again. You know, I'm going to take complete ownership of where I was back then. I'm not going to be like, oh, you know, she cheated on me. It's all her. It was like just a terrible relationship. No, I was complacent. What led her to possibly seeking validation with another man? Well, it was because I was complacent in the relationship. You know, when I look at the next one, it's like, well, then I was angry all the time. She didn't communicate well with me. She dealt with things differently than I did. And how did I react? I reacted out of anger. That's my fault. You know, and never is it ever the idea of victimization. The only way that I am completely able to get over my anxiety and my depression, my experience, was by being like, yo, the purpose is in responsibility. Like, that changed my life. And so, like, I think for me, that's different oftentimes from people that get married young, is that they find that out in the relationship and somebody else has to suffer the consequences of going through the motions of that. Whereas like I had to learn how to do it on my own. And because I learned how to do it on my own, I know the next relationship or when I do get married, it's like, man, I can reflect back on that and be like, you know what? I know how to deal with it today. I know how to deal with it even without her being mentally and emotionally present with me in that moment. I think that's powerful.
Yeah. It's totally powerful. And as you said, there is no growth without responsibility, right? So even if people are listening, they're like, oh, that seems extreme or whatever. Okay, awesome. Maybe it is extreme. But guess what? You're not going to grow if you don't take responsibility, period. So if the problem is not you, then you'll never self-reflect.
Right.
So we're all better off self-reflecting and going, okay, where did I go wrong? Where did I snap? Where should I control my anger? How could I communicate better? You got to take ownership if you want to learn from your circumstances. Otherwise, you're just a victim and you're giving that over to someone else. And next relationship, it's like, oh, all men. Oh, well, geez, really? You really think so? Or is it just happens to be you because you still haven't taken ownership over something?
So you're a leader in the Iron Council. How did you get to that position exactly? In that you have a sphere of influence, right? How did you develop that sphere of influence to now be able to lead other men and help other men out?
Yeah, geez. How I got in that position in the Iron Council is I was bought in. Mm-hmm. I interview new battle team leaders. The leaders in the Iron Council, we call them battle team leaders. I interview new battle team leaders all the time. And when I'm interviewing them to determine if they're a good fit or not, the number one thing I'm looking for is, are they fully committed and bought into the mission and purpose of what we're trying to accomplish? Or are they in that position because, well, it's the natural next thing, I've been here for a while. Or, I'm going to stroke my ego and I want to sound cool, whatever. Levi, if your intent is pure and you come to me and you say, hey, Kipp, man, I'm bought into what we're doing. I'm fully committed and I'll find a way.
Yeah.
Then you have what it takes to win.
Right.
So for me, I remember I was in the Iron Council literally for like 3 months. And then I reached out to my battle team leader at the time and said, dude, I'm in. I love this. I want to serve. I want to help. What can I do? And then I got a call shortly from Ryan, and Ryan's like, hey, will you take over one of these battle teams? I ran that battle team for roughly about a year. And then Ryan's like, hey, you're killing it on that battle team. It's obvious that, and this is back to what we were saying earlier. I think he knew my intent was pure. This isn't about Kipp looking good. This isn't about anything else other than me wanting to serve and make a difference. Mm-hmm. And so he knew that intent was pure, and you find a way when the intent is there, right? So, and how I got in this business, I don't know, man. I think I could say everything from how I was raised to backwardness of my family and probably even childhood trauma to having to go through a divorce and having it be one of the darkest times in my entire life that forced me to really take ownership of my life. I mean, I think who I am is a collection of all those things.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
But I want you to speak on that, because I know that a lot of men my age that, possibly got married at like 19 years old and just went through the motions of the marriage and the relationship, and then things end, and now you're like 26, 28 years old, and it's like, man, where do I go from here? So could you speak on that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I could speak to that same era, actually. I think I was, how old was I? I was like 20, I was 26, I think, when I was divorced, and it was a miserable divorce. We weren't, it wasn't quick.
Yeah.
I didn't want it. So my opinion was like, hey, if she wants to divorce me, then she's going to have to do all the work. I'm not bought into this, right? I'm going to drag my feet. Well, yeah, I dragged my feet, but I dragged my feet with someone that didn't want to be with me. and what's level set on that, right? Level set on this. And not to get all you guys depressed that have been divorced, but what does it mean to get divorced? The person that knows you best, that has the most interest in the world to want to be with you, that has children with you, doesn't want to be with you.
Harsh reality to accept.
That is a tough pill to swallow, especially when you have kids, because that makes it really hard. It makes it harder to get divorced, and still then she doesn't want to be with you.
Right.
And I lived my life from the perspective of external circumstances. If she would only show up this way, if this was only this way, then I would be. I believed in having, then I would do, and then I would be.
Man, that is good.
And I got present to that's not how it works. It is be. It's all about being who you are in the present. That drives action. That's what you do. And then you will have. And I didn't understand that. I was waiting for the world to align for me to be happy. And I remember during my divorce, it was a rude awakening. Like I really got truly present to the idea that like, I am in this position 100%. I've created this. And now what? And so it's a hard pill to swallow, right? But when we truly believe that, it's also empowering, right? Because I am in control to actually do something about it.
How long did that take you to go through those motions to kind of figure that out before you met Asa?
So, so this is really crappy. I don't mind sharing this really quick. So I got divorced, or we're in the process of divorced. The divorce took like a year and a half, almost 2 years. And then I didn't want it still. I wanted to be with my kids. I wanted my family together. And so if my ex-wife called me up and said, hey, how you doing? You know, what are you doing tonight? You know, or, oh, I just broke up with this guy. I need someone to talk to. Will you come over? I was like, in a second. Yep. I dated girls and I like broke off relationships for a chance to restore my marriage. Now, in hindsight, all my friends around me and everyone's like, Kipp, what are you doing, man?
Stop.
Right? Like, stop doing that. She's playing you, whatever. But you know what? In hindsight, I was okay with it because I needed to know, right? I had to give it a chance. And so I did that for 5 years, man. For 5 years, I was like in this limbo kind of relationship on and off, it seemed like, with my ex, or at least in my mind. If she ever listened to it, she'd be like, what are you talking about? But it was on and off. I started dating girls eventually, or when I did date girls and they wanted to get serious, I was like, I was gun shy. I was like, man, I'm not ready. You know what I mean? I'd back out. I mean, I had some girls that were really serious, right? And I was just like, cold feet, you know, I wasn't acting on it. And the funny part is I'd constantly communicate like, I'm still broken, you know, kind of thing. I'm not ready. And then I met my wife, Asia, and all of a sudden, all that cold feet went away. And I thought, oh, okay, interesting. It wasn't me that was probably broken. It's just it wasn't the right fit.
What was the difference? Like, what was that defining difference where you're like, okay, Asa?
For her?
Yeah.
You know what? I don't know. I knew, man. I know it sounds super cheesy. I remember I met her that night. I met her, that's a whole other story to tell sometime. But I remember I met her and I came home to my roommate, my best friend, Richard, and he's like, hey, how was the night? And I'm like, dude, it was awesome, dude. I met this girl. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't know. She's pretty amazing. You know what I mean? And I was just like, next day I saw her and I was like, within a couple weeks, I was like, done. It was crazy weird. Not, you know, I don't know if you're spiritual or not, but part of me, I felt like, I think God knew that I needed confidence in that decision for me to ever make it. Yeah. And I certainly got it with her.
You know, that's something that I found is like going through darkness really brings to light how to find joy, you know, and like it presents itself at times when we don't expect it to come, you know, totally. And it comes in ways we don't create. You know, that's what's crazy to me. It's all out of our control,
outside your realm of control. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it happens and it's like, wow. Like, then you look back on it and it's like, man, that's incredible. And that right there is why I love a good story, like somebody's life story. There's so much to that. Like Kipp, we could sit here for 3-4 hours and talk about the power of taking responsibility and accountability. At the end of the day, like all those things, like they sound good and it's something all of us should do. But why would I listen to Kipp? Did I develop that relationship with Kipp? You know, did I hear Kipp's story? What created that? Yeah. That's what I always want to find. That's my goal in podcasting, is always to find that why? Because that why question, there's so much to that. And that develops that's how I resonate. That's a relationship I know that I can be there with that guy, man. I know that he's there for me. I know his intentions. I know that he understands me, and he's somebody that I value his opinion on it because I know that he was there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
I did have one thing here.
Oh, the one thing. Bring it.
So let's get a little bit into mentorship, because I know that was originally what we wanted to get into. I'll give you a little bit of background for me, and maybe you can feed off of this. But when I was growing up, my dad was a severe alcoholic, and my mom was a single mom of 7 of us. I grew up in a home. I have 4 older siblings, so they were out of the home when I was growing up.
So you're down the middle almost.
Yeah. Well, I'm at the end. I'm the last of 7.
Last of 7. You're the youngest. Okay.
I am the youngest, and so I just had 2 sisters in the home and my mom. So I was surrounded around women all the time, and I never had a man in my life that was. Well, I shouldn't say I never did. My grandpa was a father figure to me, and what I mean by father figure is somebody that takes me out and teaches me things. It's important for a boy to like learn how to work and like kind of figure out, maybe how to build, put something together, experience maybe a little bit of that creative side, whatever, but also like be able to enjoy the moments of, going and playing golf with grandpa or going fishing, whatever. But my grandpa got extremely sick when I was 12 years old, and I lost him by the age of 16. And then my dad's still an alcoholic. I lose him at 18 years old. And so throughout my young adulthood has been this trying to understand manhood, trying to understand my masculinity, my position. And I think that it stacks on from all of it, is like my sisters, my mom, all of this. And I've always had a brother-in-law that was somebody I could call and be like, hey, what do you think about this or whatever? And I'm grateful for that. But I think that's what's so important, is that we find that, right? That we find another man, like you said, like-minded, that is like, there for us and understands and gives some direction.
Totally. I totally agree. I can relate to you, Levi, a little bit. My dad, so when I was, how old was I? Probably when I was 8, I think we moved away. It's kind of weird. My parents are so odd, man, but they never actually got a divorce, but we moved away when I was 8 years old. And I didn't live with my dad at all until I was a junior in high school. So there's this big gap. And as you guys can imagine, like junior in high school, it's not like dad time, right? That's like, you know what I mean? Right. At that age, it's all about your buddies and sports and other things like that. So I really missed some opportunities there. But even when I was younger, my dad was never a guy to ever do anything. I'd done one thing with my dad, and that is work. That is it. I've never gone to the movies with the guy. I've never watched the game with him. I've never done anything that I've never even thrown a baseball with him or a ball, but I've worked with him. That's it. And that's kind of how he showed up for all of my siblings. And I don't mean to come across negative on my dad, because I actually have great joy from what he's given me. In his own right. But I had an older brother that, to your point, realized what he was missing. And no joke, this speaks like so highly of what kind of person he is. So he took me in. My childhood, it was him kind of raising me. And later on in years, I asked Dustin, I said, hey, dude, why did you always do that stuff? Like, why did you always like hang out with me and help me do my stuff and taught me how to work and did all these things? And he said, because I wanted to make sure that I was going to be a good dad. And so I thought I'd learn on you.
Wow, that is incredible.
And that's really what he did. He's one of my older brothers. And he taught me the importance of spirituality. He taught me the importance of praying. He taught me the importance of work. He taught me so much. And it was just because he wanted to make sure that when he was going to become a dad, he was ready, because we didn't have that, right? in our lives where we felt like we had this father figure to help us. But my point being is like, it's critical, but I think what's most critical, and it kind of goes back to what we're saying earlier, it's like, you don't know, possibility is what we create for others, right? And care, right? So if you're getting after it and you're that to me, and I know it's genuine and the intent is pure, and you're leading from the front, then it means I can do it too. Right. And as long as you're solid on that path, then when I have struggles, who do you think of? You don't think about calling your moron friends for advice. You go back to the individuals of your life that showed up powerfully, that were men of honor. That's who you go to, right? And that's the importance of that figure in our lives.
And I like that because it relates back to the Iron Council and kind of what you were saying there. Yeah, because I find that in my brother-in-law too, is that he was there like even when, I mean, from the age of 3 on, he's been in my life. And so like anytime I had a relationship struggle where I didn't want to talk to my 21-year-old friend that is probably just as dumb as I am, if I didn't want to talk to him and I just wanted some advice, hey, how do I handle this? Then I know I have somebody that I can go to, and somebody that's going to be straightforward and be like, hey, Levi, quit being a freaking idiot. Do X, Y, and Z, and maybe it will help you. Or somebody even to sit down with and be like, what are the potential outcomes of making this decision? And I think that that's extremely important, especially for young men, because I know that right now, it seems in today's culture, like so many men are missing that. So and like when I reached out to you, and I told you like that's really the base of my following is these young men that are really struggling just to kind of find some aim, some meaning in their life, and taking that responsibility. And the key thing that I've always had that I'm very thankful for is my older brother, because he's always been there to like tell me, go here, don't be overly focused here, focus on what you want the outcome to be, like focus on making the right decisions to get there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there are so many opportunities I think that we have, and we shun away from them because we think it's not our calling, or I'm only the uncle, or I'm only the other brother. He won't listen. Man, I mean, the opportunities are there. I mean, all the time. I mean, and even for me, like I want to be really clear too. Like I shun where I probably shouldn't be shunning. I have my wife just literally last week. She's like, hey, you got to talk to Charlie. And I'm like, why? Because this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. It's like it's her nephew. And he's like, you need to talk to him. He's getting kicked out of school. No one's listening to him. He's in a really bad spot. Right. And it's like, yeah, it'd be really easy to go, not my kid, I don't know what's going on. He's an angry teenager. But the reality of it is like whether they listen or like whether they show me that they're receiving it or not, it's getting received. And there's some precedents being set if we're smart about it, and if we do it well, man, there's opportunities there for us to leave that lasting impact, right? And set the tone of that relationship where we can be that for them, whether they're asking for it or not.
Yeah, and it comes back to I resonate with the message of the Order of Man and the Iron Council there, as in like provide, preside, and I just blanked protect. The other one, and protect. Yeah. But I mean, seriously, I mean that the power of presence and being there is just incredible. And I don't just have my brother-in-law, I have other people in my life that are like that, and it's good to have a community like that. So totally. And I think one thing that's on my mind of late in some of our conversations in the Iron Council is, and I shared this in one of our team meetings actually a couple weeks ago. My wife asked me, during dinner we usually ask our kids questions, whatever, what was a learning experience today or whatever. And my wife goes, who are heroes that you have? And
I couldn't name a hero. But my response was, my dad's my hero in regards to work ethic. My brother's my hero in regards to fatherhood. Ryan's my hero in regards to conviction, right? And be careful, right, that we don't put guys on pedestals, because we're all human, man. We're all struggling. I struggle all the time. You know, I second guess whether I should be opening my mouth and sharing my opinion on a regular basis, you know. Yeah. But there's knowledge to be shared. And we should have multiple heroes, but not a hero, in my opinion. Now, religiously, maybe you have a perfect person that you can say is a hero, but other than that, you shouldn't have a hero.
Right.
Oh, Steve Jobs, he was amazing. No, the guy was a complete jerk.
Yeah.
Right. David Goggins, he's my hero. Yeah, can't stay married. Right? Like, guys, we're really powerful in different areas. Select people for who they are or where they are as a potential hero, but not the hero.
Right.
That doesn't exist.
And this may sound egotistical, and I don't mean it that way. But one thing that I look at is like, who is my hero? My hero is my future self. And the reason why my future self is my hero is because I'm like, well, who do I want to be? Do I want to be a good man, or do I want to end up 50 years old, bitter and resentful because I've had 3 wives leave me? Now I got 6 kids and I'm paying child support on 5, and I hate the way my life is going. So I spend time drinking and I'm alone, blah, 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 blah. You just run down that. And then I'm like, how do I prevent that? That's my hero. My hero is who I am now, is not exactly who I can become, but it's my potential. And I think you take that, you know, doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu or anything you take up, working out, whatever, is that, you know, what's the outcome of me being persistent here and going towards that goal is you're going to be fulfilled, that you achieved something. I'm here, but I'm not done. I'm not done. It never stops. There's no end to that. So
totally. I agree. And it's the power of being inspired, right? Or being inspiring, is be about something. You know, I say that to my well, they're not teenagers anymore, but my older boys, you know, it's just be about something, you know, no mediocre, you know, getting by, right? That's not enough.
Right. Quit walking through life aimlessly, you know, have a destination you want to get to, you know, and go. Like, quit sitting around. Like, and I think about this, like when I started podcasting, I was like, man, there's going to be so many people that think I'm some type of fool because I'm going to be talking about things that I think and blah, 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 blah. But, you know, when I was young, I was always into documentaries and listening to public speakers. In fact, I grew up listening to a lot of John MacArthur and John Piper and guys of the such. So I was always like, it would have me thinking, and I was like, oh, I could add to that. I could add to that. Now, I could either sit here at 26, 27 years old with nothing to do, and I could just be like, oh, man, I really want to talk about things, but I'm not comfortable with myself talking about things. Then it was like, you know what? I just got to do it because I really don't have anything going on. I'm single. I kind of hate life right now. No, I got to find something. So I'm like, I'm going to look like an idiot, but I'm doing it. And it's been like a focus of a year and a half now of doing it and developing confidence behind the microphone, just to be able to be okay with my thoughts and being able to articulate them and communicate them in an authentic manner where it comes out, where it's not like hemming and humming around, right? And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to sound like an idiot because I have sounded like an idiot 15,000 times before. And I know this one can't be worse than the first one, you know? So I just continue to go. But I think that's a good quality and perspective of life, is you just continue to go. Don't purposefully be foolish by being aimless, but have aim, know where you want to go, and be okay with the things that come along the way that aren't as great as what you thought that it was going to be at this present moment. You know? Totally.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. Life is Life is great. I love it. It's literally, everything is a journey, you know, and along that path, you just pick up so much. And it's like, I could use that, you know?
Yeah.
So I know that we had planned for an hour. So Kipp, I know you've been working hard on the house and everything, but
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, first world problems, right? I was like, woe is me. I'm building a house. Oh, you're fixing your house? No, I'm building a vacation home. Like, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, please feel sorry for me.
Yeah, it must
world
be rough
problems,
to have
you
a
know?
vacation home.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. You poor guy. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you wanna kind of cover, or any closing thoughts that you have, or?
No, I mean, I think in the spirit of our conversation, you know, I actually like, you know, if I had to put a theme to things, right? There's a theme of importance of taking responsibility, and being in the moment. There's a little bit of that in what we've talked about, the power of presence, you know, because I do feel it's in being, or the focus around who you are being, is ultimately allows, it's really in ownership. Because otherwise what happens is we're worried about what? We're dragging stories of the past, or we're trying to like, oh, well, in the future, then I will be, right? And the reality of it is, and you said this earlier, it's like, there's tons of stuff that's outside of our realm of control. You know, you can't force someone to stay married to you.
Right.
You can't force a boss to do anything. You know, and it's ironic that we kind of walk around thinking that people owe us stuff. Like your spouse or your girlfriend should or should not do something. Says who?
Right.
You don't deserve, and no one owes you anything. And so I think there's big power in just being fully present in the moment and making sure that how we show up, you know, and not getting wrapped up in, you know, tomorrow or yesterday for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've enjoyed it. I think I'm looking forward to hearing more on this topic. I think it's one thing that isn't talked about enough. It seems, you know, across all of social media, just often playing victim and, you know, not taking ownership in life, and it's just aimless at the end of the day. So
let me share a story really quick, if you don't mind, because I think this falls perfectly in with it. So my dad passed away on my birthday, actually, last year. And as you can imagine, yeah, it's okay. But you can imagine that I feel sorry for myself on my birthday now, right? Like, you know, the old man kind of ruined my birthday. Yeah. And his 1 year anniversary was on February 12th. And on paper, right, I could have a conversation with anybody in this world and go, Kipp, why are you down on your birthday? And I could say, it's the anniversary of my father's death, right? So give me a break. And we'd all go, yeah, we got you, you know, woe is Kipp, and I'd feel sorry for myself, and rightfully so. My daughters made me a card, and they had it on the kitchen table when I woke up in the morning. And my oldest daughter, Kika, she's 12. And in her card, she says, Dad, I know you're mad, and I know you're sad with your dad dying on your birthday, and I'm really sorry about it. But it affects us, so please let it go.
Oh, man.
How we show up impacts us, impacts people.
Yeah.
You know, and I realized, like, it doesn't matter that it feels justified, right? So whatever story we have that's justifying our victimhood, whatever story we have, I'm sure it's a good story too, you know, and some really good ones, you know. My dad beat the shit out of me when I was a kid. Yeah. You know, I've been through what's the foster care system. We have solid stories. All of us have these amazing stories to justify our trauma, to justify our actions, to justify our misery. Yep. But guess what? The impact is still affecting those that you love.
Yes.
So let it go.
Yep. You have a choice. It's yours to make. And at the end of the day, you're the only one that has any potential control of the outcome. So with that being said, I'll close it up. How do I want to do it? This one's going to be an edit. All the time. I'm like, that's always the hardest for me too. You know, how do you close?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you guys a shout, and I'm going to put all your guys' stuff in the description as well, and links, because man, I really try to get other men to listen to you guys, because the thing is, at the end of the day, why, if I'm a friend, why am I not giving them something that's valuable? You know, I know it's valuable to me. Why am I not sharing it? And it's something as simple as like, just, hey, check this out. And if they choose to, whatever, like, it doesn't matter. Like, people are so often to share a song with their friends that they enjoy, but won't share something that impacts them and gets them through their day. And for me, I just think that that's sad. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add value and give that to somebody else because it added value to me. So y'all go check out the Order of Man podcast, even the Iron Council. You guys have Facebook group and everything. So go check that out. I see men oftentimes post there. That's where you guys pose the questions for your Wednesday episodes, your Q&As, and everything will be in the description. For the Pursuing Truth podcast, everything is on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Please leave an Apple Podcast review and rating, because that just increases the analytics, gets people on here to listen to these great conversations like I had with Kipp today. And you guys have a great rest of your week, and God bless.